Hi guys, it's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zickery, author of The Twilight Zone Companion. And my friend and follower Cosmic has asked me to talk about how Rod Serling got the writing staff that he did on Twilight Zone. So, Rod broke into radio first and then television by submitting a script to a contest held by the Dr. Christian radio program, where the motto was the only show where the audience writes the show. And and so I think he had a great leaning toward wanting to give people a shot. So at first, on Twilight Zone, he knew he'd be writing the majority of the scripts. That was a contractual thing, but he couldn't write all of them. And so he put out the word that they were open for submissions, and they got 5,000 submissions, of which he and his staff were able to read 500, and all of them were terrible. He said none of them were of professional quality. They were more like you'd write therapeutic writing to give to your therapist, he said. And so then he was like at a loss. So he called Ray Bradbury and he said, "Help, I'm not a science fiction aficionado." He had read science fiction as a kid in Amazing Stories and so forth, but as an adult he hadn't been. And so he called Ray Bradbury, who was the top science fiction writer at the time. We're talking 1959. And he said, "Help, I don't know the first thing about science fiction." So Ray said, "Come on over and I'll help you." So he went over to Ray's house in Cheviot Hills, this big yellow house that I was in many a time. And Ray said, "Come on downstairs." Ray had his office in his basement. And he pulled 4 books from his bookcase. One was by himself. One was by John Collier, the British writer extraordinaire. And 2 were by his protégés, Richard Matheson and Charles Beaumont. And he said, "Read these and then we'll talk." So of those writers, Rod bought a script that was an adaptation of one of John Collier's stories, The Chaser. He hired Ray Bradbury to write scripts, and he hired Richard Matheson and Charles Beaumont. Initially, he bought short stories. They'd written and adapted them, but once they were up and running, they were writing full scripts and became the core of his writing team. Now, originally, Ray Bradbury was going to be one of the major writers of Twilight Zone. I found 2 unmade Twilight Zone scripts by Ray Bradbury in Rod Serling's attic, with a note on the cover of one of them saying, "Here's the first of what will be many more to come." But unfortunately, he and Rod had a falling out, and as a result, there was only 1 script of Ray's that was made for Twilight Zone, I Sing the Body Electric. And I talk about that on a Mr. Sci-Fi video at length, and you can just type in Ray Bradbury or Rod Serling, and you'll find it, and I think you'll enjoy it. But in the meantime, Charles Beaumont and Richard Matheson had been writing TV and movie scripts and short stories and novels, and they were writing horror and fantasy and science fiction, so they were the perfect writers for Twilight Zone. And at first, Rod said to Charles Beaumont, "Write whatever you want, and we'll shoot it exactly as you wrote it." And Beaumont was dubious because he had experience on other shows where his writing was, treated like cannon fodder. But he said, I'll give it a go. And he was astonished when they shot the script the way he wrote it. There was a great respect for writers on Twilight Zone. Now later, one more of Ray Bradbury's protégés would come on the team. That was George Clayton Johnson, who wrote Kick the Can and Nothing in the Dark and A Game of Pool. And he later would go on to co-write Logan's Run and write the first episode of Star Trek that ever aired. And so that became the major group of writers working for Twilight Zone. They were not a writer's staff. They didn't come into an office at the studio. They were basically freelancers, but they were the regular writers of Twilight Zone. And then one more writer came aboard sometime later. That was Earl Holloman, who later would go on to create the Waltons. And he was much more kind of a backwoods kind of writer. So he brought another voice to Twilight Zone. But Rod had met him in the days of live television when they were both writing for shows that were shot live, broadcast live out in New York. And so that was just reconnecting with him when he moved out to LA. So that's how they got the entire writing staff for Twilight Zone. And it was an amazing group of writers. And they were matching Rod in terms of quality, in terms of phenomenal imagination. And Rod was very appreciative of them. And when he won his second Emmy for Twilight Zone, he held it up and he addressed Richard Matheson, Charles Beaumont, and George Clayton Johnson by name, and he said, "Come over to my house, guys, and we'll carve it up like a turkey." So and that was remarkable. So that's the story for today. Now, if you go to TwilightZoneCommentaries.com, I'm going to be doing over 100 full episode commentaries of the Twilight Zone that you can listen to. It's like sitting on a couch with me watching the Twilight Zone. So make sure you do that. We're also going to have a drawing for a signed copy of the new edition of the Twilight Zone Companion, the 3rd edition, signed to you, sent to you if you win the drawing. So go to Twilight Zone Commentaries right now, and you will be very glad you did. And keep watching on a daily basis. I'm posting these Twilight Zone minutes. Tell your friends, and onward to the next one. Take care, guys. Bye.